Hey there guys, so today we have a brewery talk and basically I'll be covering a brewery, just talking about it, not reviewing a beer or anything, not a brew trip. And so this is about Sixpoint Brewery. I'll be covering what I like about the brewery and then my stories and interaction with their beers. So Sixpoint Brewery out of New York, Brooklyn, New York. They started in 2004, so very much about the part of the early emergence of craft beer in New York. They currently distribute pretty well throughout the East Coast, some in the Midwest, and then some other larger markets. They don't actually have a tap room. Basically, you'll have to find their beers on shelf at a bar or in cans. So, speaking about the brewery, so what I like about them is first they changed their recipes, which is pretty interesting. Even a beer like their resin IPA or their high res IPA, double IPA, or triple IPA. Their high res was a big hit when it came out. First batch, everyone loved it. But they still listen to feedback, and they changed that recipe for the second time it came around. So I think that's just really cool that it's a great philosophy that your beers have a feedback mechanism where you listen to what people think about the beer, and even if not every change is the best for the beer and doesn't really improve it, at least you learn about the beer, and hopefully in the end you do end up changing it and improving the beer. I think it's just cool that a beer doesn't stick as itself for like 5 years or 10 years. It's cool that, hey, this is not the same beer I had earlier on and now it's better. And that's really just a cool idea. The other thing about them is that they have awesome service. I mean, I've heard of the awesome stories about people having, buying, beer that was past the best by date, and then Sixpoint just fixing that issue, sending them an awesome box. They reply to emails, they reply to comments and everything, and I just experienced it. I just got an awesome box from Sixpoint, so I'll be reviewing these beers. But what an awesome brewery, what awesome representatives they have. Say what you will about Beer Advocate, but they reply to all the forum posts. It's really cool to read. Whoever's behind that social media team is awesome. They reply to all the posts, and it's really cool. You actually learn a lot of cool things about the brewery. They actually did this really cool test where they had their resin IPA and they had it sit out in regular cellar temperature, and then they also refrigerated it. And they did a test comparing the beer after 30 days, 60 days, 90 days throughout, and that's how they decided their best by date. After 180 days out of the refrigerator, their beer was falling apart. But in general, it was a great lesson about that they learned that hops need to be fridged. So that's a lesson to you guys. I mean, I personally have never done an experiment like that, comparing a beer that was left out in cellar temperature compared to refrigerated, but they did it. And as a brewery, I assume you would want to do that if you're putting your product out there. You should really be intimately close and do these kind of experiments and really learn about when your beer falls apart out of the refrigerator and in the refrigerator. And so, speaking about my story about how I got into their beer, I saw their beer around even before I got into craft beer. So I saw their crisp Pilsner and also their Sweet Action Cream Ale. And even till this day, I still like a Sweet Action from them. You can't always get amazing craft beer options, so sometimes you have to stick to a Brooklyn Lager, a Boston Lager, a Sierra Nevada Pale Ale. For me, I like a Sweet Action. That's up my alley. I don't know, something about that beer is just really cool, easy, simple drinking beer. I like that beer. And so right when I got into craft beer, dove in really hard and fast. They were part of my experience. I mean, since I got into craft beer, I've had 26 of their beers. I guess I'm in New York, so that makes sense. But one of the beers I remember is Spice of Life, which was a IPA series where it's a pretty interesting concept. Every month of the year, they changed the hop of that IPA, and it was draft only. So I remember trying their Spice of Life Galaxy, and that's where I fell in love with Galaxy. Just a light malted IPA, and it was awesome. I mean, Galaxy is one of my top 3 hops now. I just remember drinking that IPA and just absolutely loving it. And it's probably part of the reason why I like the New England beers, because it sure showed me, wow, not all of these IPAs have to be bready and sweet. This was a really good one. Another one was Three Beans. So I guess I have 4 beans now, but Three Beans was one of the beers that got me into big imperial stout porters. The 3 beans in that beer were I guess regular beans, coffee beans, and chocolate beans. So really great imperial porter that got me into just big beers. But then since then I haven't really bought too many of their beers. I guess high res I do buy. I do like that triple IPA, pretty awesome for a really big beer. But what I do really like about them is still in general their one-off series. Beers that are not necessarily one-off, but tap only, so you can't really find them in a can. And those include Barrel Aged Otis, which is a just one of the best barrel-aged imperial stouts coming out of New York, and they're not too many, but this one was very impressive. I was very happy with that one. And another one was Guerrilla Warfare Coffee Porter, which they put out for a while, but it has yet to be canned, and I would love to see it canned because I think that is one of the best coffee stout porters that I've seen around. I mean, I've had it against Founder's Breakfast Stout. It killed that beer, and I'm very curious if the Guerrilla Warfare can stand up against something like, you know, Cane's Morning Bell, or even Treehouse Double Shot. Guerrilla Warfare is the real deal, so I'm very excited. If you're listening to Sixpoint, definitely put more of that beer out. And so yeah, just a really cool story about you know, they were there before I got into craft beer. They were part of the reason why I like certain beers in craft beer now, because, you know, they were just what was available, and sort of taught my palate of, you know, what I enjoy now is sort of a precursor was from their beers, and they're still putting out some awesome beers. So yeah, let me know what you think about Sixpoint Brewery. I mean, awesome brewery, really awesome people. I mean, thank you guys so much for this great box of beers and stickers. And yeah, let me know if you guys like this brewery talk kind of thing. Until next time, guys, cheers.